Imagine a time machine that could travel through the history of money, power, and business. If we went back thousands of years, who would we find as the Apple or Amazon of their time? Who controlled the resources, wealth, and influence that made them the most valuable organizations on Earth? Let's begin in the very dawn of organized civilization, Mesopotamia, around 3000 BC. Back then, wealth wasn't measured in stock prices or market caps. It was measured in grain, livestock, and land. The first companies weren't tech startups. They were temples. The great temples of Mesopotamia didn't just serve religion. They controlled massive farmlands, stored grain, employed workers, and acted as banks, lending food and silver to local citizens. In many ways, they were the first corporations in history. The temple wasn't just spiritual, it was economic power. Jump forward to ancient Egypt, around 2500 BC. Here, wealth was concentrated in the hands of the pharaoh and the institution that supported him. The state itself was the company. The construction of the pyramids wasn't just a religious act. It was a demonstration of state power, funded by grain taxes collected from across the Nile. If you were looking for the richest company of the era, it was the Egyptian royal state, controlling land, labor, and gold mines. Now let's move to ancient Rome, around 100 AD. By this time, trade had expanded, and Rome was the hub of a massive empire. Here we see the rise of something new, the Societas Publicanorum, private companies that collected taxes on behalf of the Roman state. Wealthy Roman families invested in these corporations, and they made fortunes by extracting tax revenues across the empire. Imagine the IRS being a for-profit company, and you get the picture. These Roman tax companies were among the most profitable businesses of their age. By the Islamic Golden Age, around 800 to 1000 AD, wealth shifted toward trade networks. The Muslim world controlled vast portions of the Silk Road, the most important trade route on Earth. Merchant houses in Baghdad and Damascus became immensely wealthy, dealing in everything from spices and silk to precious metals. They perfected the use of credit, checks, and partnerships, ideas that laid the foundation for modern banking. Then came medieval Europe. Around the 1300s, the most valuable company wasn't a merchant guild or trade house. It was the Catholic Church. The church owned about 1/3 of all land in Europe, collected tithes from nearly every household, and held political influence over kings and emperors. If measured like a corporation, the Catholic Church would have been the single wealthiest institution of the medieval world. But trade was exploding too. In the 1400s and 1500s, as explorers connected Europe with the Americas and Asia, wealth flowed to new types of businesses, trading companies. Venice grew rich by controlling Mediterranean trade. Genoa and Florence pioneered banking. And then came the age of colonization, where one company would rise above all others. That company was the Dutch East India Company, founded in 1602. Often called the world's first multinational corporation, it had powers no modern company could dream of. It could wage war, sign treaties, mint coins, and control territories. At its peak in the 1600s, its value, adjusted for inflation, is estimated at over $8 trillion, making it the most valuable company in human history. That's bigger than Apple, Microsoft, or Amazon today, combined. It was so powerful that nations feared it, and its ships dominated trade from Europe to Asia. In the 1700s, another competitor rose, the British East India Company. Backed by the English crown, it controlled massive parts of India, held a private army, and became the backbone of the British Empire's wealth. It wasn't just a company. It was an empire builder, ruling millions of people directly. By the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution had shifted the balance of wealth again. Railroads, steel, and oil became the new gold. One man stood above all, John D. Rockefeller. His company Standard Oil became so dominant that at its peak it controlled over 90% of the U.S. oil industry. Rockefeller himself became the richest man in modern history, with a fortune equivalent to over $400 billion today. Standard Oil was so powerful, it was eventually broken up by the U.S. government. But Standard Oil wasn't alone. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, other titans like Carnegie Steel and U.S. Steel shaped global industry. These were the Amazons and Microsofts of their time, massive, world-changing corporations that defined the age of industrial capitalism. As the 1900s began, the world entered a new age of mass production, consumer goods, and communication. This wasn't just about kings, temples, or merchant ships anymore. Now corporations became household names, with products reaching millions of ordinary people. By the 1920s, one company stood above the rest: General Motors. Cars were the new symbol of modern life, and GM, with brands like Chevrolet and Cadillac, dominated global markets. At its peak, GM was so influential that its revenue made up more than 3% of the entire U.S. economy. People used to say, "What's good for General Motors is good for America." Alongside cars, the new titans of the 20th century were communication giants. AT&T controlled almost every phone line in the United States. Imagine one company having a monopoly over how billions of conversations happened every day. AT&T's power was so great that in 1984, the U.S. government broke it into smaller companies, just as they once did with Standard Oil. After World War II, another company began shaping the world: IBM. Known as Big Blue, IBM became the leader in computing long before Silicon Valley existed. From government contracts to business mainframes, IBM symbolized the future of information technology. In the mid-20th century, it was the most powerful tech company on Earth. But then came a revolution: the personal computer. In the 1970s and 80s, a young company called Microsoft, founded by Bill Gates and Paul Allen, created the software that powered PCs worldwide. By the 1990s, Microsoft was so dominant that almost every computer on Earth ran its Windows operating system. Its market cap made it the most valuable company of the 1990s, and Bill Gates became the world's richest man. Then came Apple. Founded in 1976 by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, Apple had ups and downs through the 80s and 90s. But in the 2000s, Apple transformed itself with the iPod, iPhone, and iPad. The iPhone especially changed the way humans interacted with technology forever. By 2011, Apple overtook ExxonMobil as the most valuable company in the world. By 2018, it became the first company ever worth $1 trillion, and later, the first to hit $3 trillion. Speaking of ExxonMobil, the late 20th century also saw oil giants dominate the global economy. Companies like Exxon, Shell, and BP controlled the world's most important resource: oil. They were the backbone of cars, planes, electricity, and global trade. At their peaks, ExxonMobil and Saudi Aramco were the most valuable companies on Earth. Saudi Aramco, the Saudi state oil company, still remains one of the world's most valuable, worth over $2 trillion today. But oil wasn't the only game. The dot-com boom of the late 1990s introduced new internet giants. Companies like Amazon, founded by Jeff Bezos in 1994 as an online bookstore, grew into global empires. Despite the dot-com crash in 2000, Amazon survived and became the backbone of e-commerce and cloud computing. By 2020, Amazon was worth over $1.5 trillion. Google, later Alphabet, also emerged in the late 1990s, changing how humans accessed information. Its search engine became so dominant that Google it became part of everyday language. Today, Alphabet is consistently one of the top 5 most valuable companies in the world. By the 2010s and 2020s, the tech giants formed a new elite club, often called the $1 Trillion Club. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, and Saudi Aramco rotated in and out as the world's most valuable companies. And then came a new player: NVIDIA. Originally known for making graphics cards for gaming, NVIDIA's chips became the foundation of artificial intelligence.
As AI exploded in 2023 and 2024, NVIDIA's value skyrocketed past $2 trillion, putting it alongside Apple and Microsoft as the most valuable companies on Earth. So where does that leave us in 2025? The crown of most valuable company now shifts between Apple, Microsoft, Saudi Aramco, and NVIDIA. Each represents a different era of human progress. Oil, Aramco, symbolizing the age of energy, Apple, symbolizing the age of consumer technology, Microsoft, symbolizing the age of software, and NVIDIA, symbolizing the dawn of artificial intelligence. And that's the story. From Mesopotamian temples in 3000 BC to trillion-dollar tech empires in 2025. So in conclusion, the most valuable company of any era tells us something important about what the world valued most at the time. From grain and land, to ships and trade routes, to oil and steel, to computers and artificial intelligence, each era's giants shaped the future. And today, as AI and technology reshape our world again, we're watching history unfold before our very eyes. If you enjoyed this journey through history's greatest companies, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the stories